welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. And so
Thank
starting from the brass tacks, tell us why you do the work you do, how you got to it, what was your background?
Okay. They say that these are not the best of times, but they're the only times I'll ever know. And I believe there is a time for meditation in cathedrals of our own. So when I see that sad surrender in my brother's eyes, I can't stand aside and only sympathize. For we are always what our situation hands us. It's either sadness or euphoria. I have been singing that song for 25 years and it keeps on fitting. Like, right? That's where we are. So motivationally, I, from a very early age, grew up with a fair amount of danger around me. And for instance, I'm sort of codependent in the best and worst of all ways. So when I was about 7, my mom helped me write advocacy letters to save the wolves. I know that's a little controversial in this area.
No.
Okay.
We're good.
But anyway, so I think I've just been drawn to injustice, but inspired by creation and just inclined to fiercely defend creations of creatures and planet. And I want to live a life fully on the game board. I have a lot of privilege and access that I use as fully as I can. But I also want to deploy the resources, assets, capabilities, coalitions, colleagues, everything that is within my world, I want to apply to making, as Muhammad Yunus says, a new civilization, which is really a new old one, because for 45,000 years, people did a lot of good work in civilization. It's the last 5,000 that seems a little problematic.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. And speaking of problematic, 2 key sectors you work in, banking and agriculture. Why those 2?
So my partner, Tom Steyer, and I took a hard look at where we were in our life's work after we had raised 4 children. He had built Farrell on the hedge fund, and we'd done a lot of philanthropy. And we realized we wanted to be in operating roles towards systems change. So we created a bunch of social enterprises, one of which was a bank and one of which was a ranch. And those are just very large overlapping systems in need of systems change and management. And if you could add energy in there, because food and energy, I think, are almost one. But if we could get business and the economy right in those systems, co-creating with all sorts of other people already deeply ensconced in that kind of systems change, that's what would be necessary, because all the government and philanthropy in the world can't clean up after bad business and a bad economy. So in particular, both of those systems are very susceptible to mutualism, to collective stewardship of commons. To us, they're kind of collective utilities, and they touch every issue in society. They should not be privately held. They should be collectively stewarded. So for instance, banking we think of as the original and most powerful form of crowdfunding. Not that a specific deposit finances a specific loan, but all deposits, all our idle cash is financing the world, and we want it to be the world that we actually want to live in. Right now, it's financing a world full of harm and danger. So we wanted to start a bank to reawaken people's agency and accountability over their own money, and to set a model for the banking system to return to beneficial banking. That's a branded term we made up. You could say regenerative banking too. And it seems implausible because the bank now is almost $2 billion in assets. That's really tiny in the banking system of, some that are coming up on 3 and 4 trillion in assets. But David was always predicted to beat Goliath. And it is a small, agile agent who can bring catalytic change to a system. And then on the regen ag side, we just recognize that if you achieve food sovereignty, you tackle and really solve for a lot of other problems in society. It's like banking, it's a massive system. Like banking, it fuels many others. So every industry in the economy depends upon banking, or at least capital flows and finance. And there are large, giant industries that are embedded in our industrial ag system, including oil and gas. So from a political standpoint, these are two systems that tend towards consolidation, which leads to usually to corruption, mostly political in nature. They are centralized at our peril, because that creates many single points of fail, and you see those frailties come out in like the pandemic, with both the financial and food systems were totally stressed and not built for purpose or resiliency. And then commodification. So everybody gets the same miserable mortgage or auto loan. Everybody gets the same processed homogeneic food. And that not only leaves value behind, it destroys value, and it causes a lot of harm. So these systems seem to us to be an opportunity to actually transform the whole economy. And as the economy goes, economy means the management of the household. It's Jane Jacobs' Nature of Economies. Economies should act like ecologies. That's the real source of justice and equity and value and resiliency for any of those systems. So we wanted to help bring economic systems into a better shape, a better form. So a banking system that where everybody owns a little bit of everything and nobody owns too much of anything, a food system that is wilderness-based and in concert with nature, both of them being true catalysts, meaning they fully and beneficially recycle resources or cycle resources in a closed-loop circular economy, and they self-repair. That's the definition of a catalyst. So. That's why we're there.
Definitely. Well, we'll hear more about food sovereignty tomorrow, which I'm excited for. We have fantastic Lauren Cardelli from A Growing Culture, and that's a really big part of this. But it is the systems change, and it's so powerful. So given the hats you wear, you're chair of the board of Beneficial State Bank, you're chair of the TomKat Ranch Educational Foundation. What is a typical day? And you wear many other hats. Do you have a typical day? Or just, what does it look like?
Well, first, I'm really lucky in the company I keep, and I'm really lucky to get to do this work. It's an extreme privilege, and I don't take it for granted. But Tom and I have actually pursued an arc of activities, which is reflected in our day, our daily habits, and what happens in a given day. So they're cumulative, like layers of a cake. We don't start something new, stop that last one. We just keep trying all these strategies in concert. And it's not that everybody needs to do all those strategies, but if you look at a consortium or a portfolio, look at change makers, you'll find these pieces, I think, as essential components to a whole. So we started in conventional philanthropy, not very satisfying, not very effective, I'm sorry to say. But it's important because it's the dominant way I think we treat symptoms of bad systems. It isn't really getting at systems change, because the people and sources of money that have the power to change the status quo rarely do, because it's from whence their power comes. So started social enterprises for the reason I said. We wanted to take operating roles to get the insights of actual actors in these large, mostly economic systems that had political, government, and cultural levers to pull as well. And I will say, as an aside, to tribute to the conversations this morning, I don't actually think the regenerative systems that are going to benefit all and harm none and hold are going to be rule-based or supported only by laws, and I don't believe markets do anything except what we tell them to do. So I think they're going to be culturally based, and I think historically that has been how good civilizations hold. It's a commitment. Culture is moral kind of arrangement. Anyway, social enterprises, get those spinning along, realize, whoa, a lot of the rules are wrong for markets or the economy or government, so get really deeply involved in policy and legislation. Those rules are governed by politicking, and so we got into politics, need to impeach. Tom ran for president to get race and climate in the conversation, come back off the campaign, realize, oh my gosh, we need to do philanthropy reform because it's killing us too. And then we realized on the campaign that it's really storytelling that changes hearts and minds and lofts culture as a dominant dynamic, and it's necessary. So we resurrected an accidental film company and rebranded to TomKat Media, which is lifting up the unheard voices who have the best insights because they've been hurt first, worst, and longest of where we should go with and what the solution set is. And then we also do a lot of work in community-led equitable economic development to give voice and practicality and results. So mostly with the Regenesis Institute, but trying to get investment capital into the frontline communities so we can leapfrog over the extractive industrial world and get to something that's good for everybody.
So as I said, a lot of hats. I mean, incredible what you do. Yes, I think a round of applause, right? Unstoppable, thankfully, for all of us. Another thing you do, though, is you convene. And tell me about that. What does that look like? Why? We love convening, obviously, and believe in the power of it.
Yeah. Well, probably I believe that 8 billion heads are definitely better than one. I'm not even terribly concerned about 8 billion human creatures on the planet as long as we get consumption and full cycling of resources. I have a feeling that in ancient times, when we were pink, fleshy, weak creatures trying to survive on the African savanna, there were so many animals, creatures, nematodes, everything, that there was probably more life on Earth than there will be with 8 billion people. But we just have to steward our resources better. Anyway, that was an aside. I do think we need to get together to cabal, to learn from the freedom practices of those peoples who've been long in fugitivity, to a Back to the Future strategy, to remember and be taught and reminded of the regenerative ways of the longest standing peoples of the world, and to rigorously exercise ideas and plans and opportunities together, because we'll have more insights and we'll be more honest about what is actually going to work. The ultimate in caballing to me is going to be gaming. The Gaming for Good community is now 200 million people or something like that. And I think gaming, while it's been associated with a lot of stuff that maybe we don't like so much, it is an opportunity to frugally iterate ensembles of solutions for our problems in 45 seconds and no money, instead of 10 years and $200 million putting carbon in a limestone cave where it doesn't belong. So I do think that convening is super important right now, and that it's going, in a globally connected world, there's going to be constellations of regional, local-based collectives doing all this work, and we're going to learn from all around without consolidating, without losing our autonomy. And I'm going to anticipate what you're about. So this is a scary time. Tyranny on the rise, a lot of populations already having been subjected to tyranny for centuries, and a lot of political divide and discourse. When I walk around, I was CEO of the bank for 8 years, and I did a lot of traveling, and I stopped trying to guess especially young people's political ilk. It was impossible for me to know, because they were united on a populist notion of building community, stewarding their commons, and, like making a preschool together. And I didn't know if they were far right or far left. They just wrapped around and met in the back, and they got stuff done. And I think that's where we need to go now, because 98% of the people want the same thing. It's the 2% who are causing us problems.
So that's your priority, and then, yes, that's your, I didn't want to interrupt the applause. So right now, given this moment, the priority, and how do we accelerate?
So Tom and I have been very politically active. We have extraordinary access, and it's not like I'm not paying attention to what's going on right now and what the pragmatic solution is between now and November 5th. But what I've decided to dedicate the rest of my life to, I'm 65, so hopefully I have the rest of my life to do this, is what my young people and my family and the ones I traffic with outside are pleading for, which is a new economy, a new civilization that allows people to live well and not harm each other and not destroy our commons and transcend a political system that's deeply broken. So I'm very involved in platform cooperatives. We're having a panel tomorrow on finance, digital assets, and other tools to support these platform cooperatives and communities that are doing things right and just need to be ensconced in the kinds of assets that the extractive economy that needs to go away is enjoying. So I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to build a new economy and a new civilization that's kind.
I love that. That's kind and that's powered by these incredible platforms that we're going to talk about tomorrow, but we're also going to talk about today. So maybe you could help us mention a little bit about how those platforms do that and how what we're going to hear from next, which is I'm excited we're going to be talking about.
So I'm obsessed with platform cooperatives. It's an economic concept that's been as old as the feudal times. It's more prevalent in Europe. To my knowledge, but a platform cooperative recognizes that a lot of the business and technology platforms in which we all participate are natural monopolies because of network effects. They tend towards one consolidated or two consolidated systems because the value to the network increases with every member that joins, and so they spiral up. They currently, the capital providers get most of the return off of those platform cooperatives. So the founders of Facebook have to build competitive infrastructure and they deserve a return off of that. For instance, when TikTok came on the scene, they had to build Reels at Instagram. And that's necessary for the digital sort of efficacy of that platform. However, most of the value on the platform doesn't come from the capital providers. It comes from the users, and not just our data, but our sharing, shopping, querying, content creation, connectivity, everything else. We just don't get compensated for it. It's called social production without social compensation. Imagine a world where every act of value generated a micro share of equity for the generator, validated on the blockchain. And over time, that proliferates the ownership, therefore the control, therefore the management and governance of that platform to something that's fully democratized. Why on earth would the equity holders give up those shares? To prevent a network reversal, rats leaving a sinking ship. When Cambridge Analytica came on Facebook, they were terrified and bought WhatsApp and Instagram. So you can secure the network effect by giving everyone a stake in the game, and you can protect it because we wouldn't have allowed Cambridge Analytica on there. Who's going to do that? Maybe Priscilla, Melinda, Mackenzie, and Laureen will see that's the way to go.
The women philanthropist leaders and Kat.
And they own a lot of those big platforms, so.
They do.
Yeah.
They do, thankfully. Well, Kat, thank you. It's too short, but we have more tomorrow. We have a really incredible session. We're going to have plenty of time tomorrow to dig into these platforms, how they work, how we can leverage them, whether we're community leaders, business leaders, investors, philanthropists, individuals, voters, consumers, all of it. I love how you work bottom up and top down, working to change the system from both directions and really empowering and enabling those connections between the capital and the people driving the change. So thank you for everything you do, for your courage and your leadership. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.